Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales, whether it's due to a lack in confidence, comfort, or just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help professionals like you improve its sales through process, practice, frameworks, and thinking differently about what you already know. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Catalyst Sale Game Plan course. It's your framework to help create clarity and focus when it comes to goal setting and execution. This is Mike Simmons. I'm the founder of Catalyst Sale. I'm really excited to have Dan Cockerell, head of Cockerell Consulting and author of How is the Culture in Your Kingdom? Dan has been on the podcast a number of times. This week, we'll discuss his book, relatively recent book. It came out late last year, How is the Culture in Your Kingdom? Dan, it is awesome to see you.
Hey, Mike, how are you been?
I have been great. And I say awesome to see you, and everybody else who's listening to this gets to hear you. So, Dan, it's awesome to hear you.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I'm going to use my my smooth voice today.
Perfect. I had an experience. You actually, it wasn't just, you recently launched a book. What book did you launch, and why did you launch it? We'll start there, and then I'm going to jump into my experience.
Yeah. So it's called How's the Culture in Your Kingdom? And it was a book. I actually was talking, my wife, Valerie, and I decided we wanted to write the book, but we needed an editor to help us. So I was actually, this was my last week at Disney. I talked to Nick Pavlidis, who I interviewed 2 or 3 editors, and he landed and I went with him. So it was a while in the making. And then it came out this past August. I know a lot of part of what we're talking about is sales. He was really good at that. He understood very clearly about positioning. He said, I can ghostwrite it for you, interview you and ghostwrite it. It'll be X. You can write it and I'll edit it. So it's well done. It'll be Y, or you can write the whole thing and I'll help you self-publish on Amazon. You won't sell any books. Of course, he pushed me right into the middle option, which seemed like the right place to go. So it's all about positioning and anchoring, right? So, we took, he said, I need 50,000 words. So in the first year I wrote 10,000 and failed miserably. And then I panicked. And so in the next 6 months, I wrote 40,000 words. In 1 month, I wrote 40,000 words when we were on vacation. And we got the book out. And, the original title was How's the Weather in Your Kingdom? I love the weather reference. There's so many great references back to weather. But the publisher, Morgan James, said, we love that title. When people tell you they love something, the butt's coming. But don't confuse the consumer. Tell them what it is. And how's the weather in your kingdom? It's kind of cool, but people don't know. Use the word culture. Everyone knows what culture means. Culture is a big deal. How's the culture in your kingdom? And I didn't, it was my baby, but I said, all right, we're going to throw the baby back out there and change the name. And it's out there now. So it's in 4 sections. It's basically, they told me, Dan, you're not the first one to write a book on leadership and management. So you better have great stories because all this stuff has been said, put me in my place. And so Valerie and I talked about it. We put stories in there. And this was really a book. I didn't want to get in the philosophical part of leadership. I wanted to get into behavioral, how to actually do this stuff. So a lot of it was very specific stories, very specific behaviors. And it's in 4 sections: leading yourself, leading your team, leading your organization, and leading change. And at the end of every chapter, we have fast track to results, which are, hey, if you like this chapter, here's 6 things you can start doing immediately, become better at strategic planning or creativity or communication or emotional intelligence. And so it's a very practical book, which was a big deal for me because I think a lot of the books, they're very entertaining, but when you're done, you don't know what you're supposed to do. And I wanted to make sure I was helping people actually make changes in how they were performing.
Yeah, there's a view as you look at these things. It's kind of like what, and then so what, and then now what. And a lot of times people miss on this now what. How do I actually start doing this work and putting things into practice? And I think that's one of the really cool things that you see in not only in the stories that you share in the book, but also the kind of the what's next component inside the book. And there's just as you're sharing the story and the evolution of the book title, takes me back. The last time we were together, it was back a mastermind in January of 2020, and a lot's happened since then. But
that's for sure.
One of the things that was discussed there was don't be so clever. Like it just, because clever can potentially confuse things. And that was feedback that I had gotten it. There was like, hey, you're just trying to be too clever here. And maybe, and as much as we understand the weather component, it goes back to the anchoring piece. Do you want to be clever, or do you want to actually sell books? Do you want people to understand what you're going to do and why they should actually engage in this? So awesome. Thanks for sharing the background there. And I want to get into kind of how things have changed over the course of the last 11 months. When you start in the book, one of the first stories you share, and I forget the number, it was a 200 something number. And I just had my number. My 222 came up the other day on the scale. And that was the awakening where I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe you've had a little bit too much fun in this period between, I would say Thanksgiving and Christmas, but it probably actually started somewhere around Halloween and maybe was a couple of months before then. But I realized, hey, I got to get refocused on the weight and just kind of have that awakening, so to speak. Yeah. So tell me about your number and the awakening that you had and what that drove you to start doing. And then we'll get into some of the mindset stuff over the course of the last year.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, mine was, hey, maybe you've had a little bit too much fun between 2014 and 2018. But it's, my wife loves, there's a word she loves, the word insidious. And she uses it whenever she can, because insidious means something that happens slowly over time that you just kind of, it's the slippery slope. Insidious is you let something go and you're like, oh, it's just a couple pounds and then a couple pounds. And if you look at it, and they say most people gain 1 to 2 pounds a year over their lives. And think about that, 25 years later, you've gained 50 pounds. And that's the math all works out and checks out. But something I'm just seeing now is it hit me then is 225. And I don't know why it just, it hit me. I just kept telling myself, well, I'm still running and I'm still working out and doing stuff. And my friend used to tell me when he was in his 30s, he goes, I thought I was just, husky. Like, that's a fun way to say you're like big boned. But I was thinking, man, this is, there's not, it shouldn't be this way. And you get used to it because it happens really slowly. But you get to a point where you just got to decide, all right, this is going to impact me. When you're younger, you can overcome a bunch of stuff. Your body is, just recovers from everything. And what I see today as I'm getting older, so I hit, 51 in February, I'll be 52. And this idea that you get older and that's just what happens. You're just not going to be able to be as strong as you were or run as much as you did. That's partially true, but I think there's an overwhelming amount of things you can continue to absolutely do and be. And my goal right now is to get in the best health of my life, the best shape of my life. And I told you before we recorded, we just moved to Colorado 4 or 5 days ago. And this morning, when I woke up, it's 23 degrees. I'm like, all right, were you really serious about that? It's like, all right, you're either in or out. And I went out, and as I told you, I did a 3 miler, which is on the kind of low end, but, I warmed up after 2.5 miles, and then the last half mile felt pretty good. But the idea is you just don't get used to it. You just can't. You have to be disciplined, and you got to think about that. My son, it's funny, Julian, he's 25. I mean, he's cut out sugar, and he has his whole fitness thing. He does the intermittent fasting, which you could say that's good or bad, or I think you're just basically intermittent fasting. You're just taking one meal out of your day. I don't know what it does to your body, but it definitely helps you take in less calories, and you can get used to it. Humans weren't meant to have 3 meals a day. So there's a lot of things we just get exposed to that just become natural, and sugar and everything, and not walking places and going, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so Valerie and I have really recommitted and said, we're in a great place now with kind of the wisdom of our life experiences. We've been able to downsize, or, we have a lot of flexibility, and we just don't want health to be something that's going to hinder us. Because once your health gets hit, everything else stops. Nothing else even matters anymore. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how creative you are. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. So anyway, that's the story. And I think part of it was I've always been fit, and my dad's been a great role model. I mean, he's at 75 years old. He's working out 3 days a week. My mom works out. They work out online with a trainer. They do stretching. They do some cardio stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to fall and break a hip, because once you break a hip, it's over. It's like, that's the beginning of the end. So anyway, I'm hoping to realize this is important earlier than most people do and get ahead of the curve here.
Well, and one of the cool things that you're talking about there, so there's this, a number of small things over a period of time can create really ugly scenarios. So, yep, 1 or 2 pounds a year over a period of time adds up. And you just did the math, and everybody can do the math. How does that switch when you start thinking about being able to do positive things? How can those incremental things, or can they add up on the other side?
Absolutely. I think, and we chatted a little bit before we recorded here on, and I bring this up often because I really got on the emotional intelligence train like 15, 20 years ago when it became sort of a popular thing. And I just love that idea that there is a quotient of your emotions that can impact how you deal with people and your success. And it's not just about your intelligence, it's about emotionally how you deal with yourself and you can deal with others. And they've done studies that said CEOs and executives who are more emotionally intelligent have much better results. Their companies have better return on investment. It's basically, do you get along with people? Do you understand people? Do you respect people? Are you willing to negotiate with people and have a connection with them? And we were so distracted today. It doesn't take a lot to be good at connecting with people, but so many people they're so oblivious to it. They got their phone in their hand. You're talking to someone and you're just not paying attention. And it really impacts the relationship. So that piece of it, I think, is extremely important. And this idea of this growth mindset is key. So I know the past 2.5 years, I've always been this way, but the past 2.5 years, I basically have never said no to a podcast. I've never said no to interview. I don't care. A lot of people say, well, how many followers do you have, or how many listeners do you have? And I'm like, you know what? I don't care if just you listen. I get a lot out of talking to this. I always learn something by talking to people, and you never know the door you're going to open, what that door is going to open after that. And you walk up to a door, you spend a little time to get to the door, and you're like, I hope this isn't a wasted trip. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you get to that door and you try to open it and there's 5 locks on it and there's no keys in sight. And you're like, okay, I may never go through that door, and I'm not going to hang around. I'm just going to go find another door. And you get to another door and you walk through it, and there's 5 more doors. And now all of a sudden you've upped your opportunities to meet new people and create new opportunities for yourself, or just to learn something new just by reaching out. And it's so easy to do. I saw people at Disney all the time. Well, I never get a chance opportunity. Why does that person always get the promotion? Why? Well, because they're the ones responding. A quick story, a guy, a good friend of mine who he's in an investment company up in New York City. We played rugby actually at BU. He's a couple years behind me, and he had an idea, and he sent an email out. He's a partner in his firm, and he sent an email out to the 12 interns that work in this firm. And because he really is looking to put a team together, and he wants to find some young, talented people. He said, hey, I'm doing a book club, and is anyone interested? And literally 11 out of 12 people didn't even respond to his email. And one person did. And they said, hey, that sounds cool. I'd love to do it. No partner has actually even talked or reached out to me since I've been here. That sounds great. And so when he was talking to someone, he goes, yeah, I'm trying to figure out who to bring onto my team. They're like, well, it's that guy. It's the guy who responded to the email. And the other 11 are wondering why they never get opportunities to move up and get these chances to do things, because they didn't see the immediate opportunity of anything in that. And so they ignored it. So just every single day, you got opportunities all around you. The problem is you just can't take these opportunities just thinking there's going to be a payoff immediately. And that happens in sales all the time. It's a classic sales thing. I got a call and I'm going to pitch my sale. And if they say no, then I'm going to move on to the next one. And it's like, that's not how it works. First of all, if you think that's how it works, then you might as well just go play the lottery and see if you can hit the lottery. That's what the LinkedIn people do, right? They send out the generic form. Hey, I have this SEO search engine for you, and click here and I can sell you something. I'm like, really? This is your plan? Like you didn't even put my name on this thing. And you expect me to call you back and talk to you about this. And I get these all the time. And they just don't understand. There has to be an investment of time. Quick wins do not happen. They happen seldomly. And I think it's like all the diets out there. Hey, if you, the Thigh Master, you remember that from the 80s, the Thigh Master, if you use this, or how many people have the treadmill in their home, it's now hang clothes on it. There is no easy solution to anything. And on the sales side, you have to first, and someone the other day said, don't sell a product, invest in a relationship, because you invest in relationships and those pay off over time. But people don't have the patience or don't have the discipline because they're like, well, I got to make money now. It's like, well, that's not how you're going to make this a sustainable business in sales if you want to get accelerate that. It has to happen over time, just like everything else that is worth doing does.
So as you make that shift from an individual focus, and you start to say, okay, well, how can I help my team see that, help others see that? Whether it's amplifying through others, but getting others around the idea as a leader inside the business to say, don't go after the shortcut or the quick fix because it doesn't exist. It doesn't really work. And ultimately, that's someone selling something. It's amazing the number of times I get those same messages where they put out the wide net and they're like, we can help you generate more leads. We can help you do whatever. We can help you build a better sales process. And I want to respond, and I don't respond to them, but tempted to respond. Have you looked at my website? Do you know what we do as an organization? Why do you think I'm in your ideal customer? And why would you waste your time here? But so there's these bad habits that we all do, not only on this ourselves, but we can see them happen across our team. How do we translate this to team and leading team?
Yeah. So there's a concept in my book I talk about, and I learned this when I worked in, I was the executive safety champion for operations for the theme parks when I was at Disney. So I was running Magic Kingdom, but I was really interested in safety, and we were doing a lot of work around safety. So I connected and learned a lot about the whole safety culture and safety business. I mean, there's professionals that do this, and I didn't have any background in it, but I started learning about it. And that one of the concepts that I've adopted now that it permeates kind of everything we do is this idea of lagging and leading indicators. So in safety, typically organizations, you get your report at the end of the month, and it shows, okay, how many accidents did you have? And how many OSHA recordable incidences did you have? And how many days of lost work occurred? And you look at, and those are basically, we call those lagging indicators. Those were just results of behaviors, people falling down, people running into things, people not following procedures. And so the idea is, if you really want to change your results, you can't focus on the results. You have to focus on the inputs. And so for a safety culture, what I learned is if you want to improve your safety scores, you need to know what the results are to see how you're doing. But you just don't go out and tell people, hey, make that 7 go to a 6 next month, because that doesn't mean anything. But what you tell people is, I'm now going to hold you accountable on how many safety meetings you have. And I'm going to hold you accountable on how many times that you get safety issues get bubbled up in your organization and you actually mitigate them and take care of them. And I'm going to measure how many near misses are reported, or accident that didn't occur but could have occurred. And if you treat near misses like actual accidents, you'll fix it, and so it won't happen again next time. I would say if I was in sales, I'd do the same thing. I'm not looking for you to make sales. I want to know this month how many relationships you built. How many people did you introduce yourself to that you are going to call back next month and take out to lunch? And I know this is hard because people want the results now. But if you're really in it for the long term, you're going to tell your sales team, I'm looking at the long range. I want to see what you're going to do over the next 6 months. I want to know what your plan is 6 months from now. So I want to see the things you're putting in place now that are going to pay off in 6 months, and help the team understand that. In most organizations, it's much easier just to put pressure on everyone and say, you just keep calling and calling, and I need you to make X sales this month and make this much revenue. But you're not helping people because they're just going to keep doing the cold calling, and they're not going to invest in the long term. It's the same way that a lot of publicly owned companies run today. They have to hit their quarterly earnings. So they defer on long-term planning, which are going to be much better investments, but they don't make those investments. They don't do those things, and they make short-term sacrifices because they have to show their shareholders that they're getting results. So I think if you can train people over time and have the patience to do that and have them understand the long-term investments in this are better, it's better for everybody. But once again, are you able to be disciplined enough to not have that payoff this month? Are you willing to wait 3, 4, 5 months to train your sales teams to start really producing? And that's where the rub is. One of the other stories that you share in the book is the one about the importance of letting your team run. So these could be, the example that comes to mind is team gets together in a team meeting. If the leader is sitting in that meeting, there are certain things that will be said or won't be said. If you give your team the flexibility, if you walk out of the room and give them time to come together and pull information together, the ideas and flexibility and creativity that will come out of that discussion will be so much better than if you felt like, hey, I've got to be in the room because I'm going to grab the marker and do some really cool things on the whiteboard while the team's talking. Can you speak to that and how lessons that you've learned related to the importance of giving your team the flexibility just to run? Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things to think about. One is you can do that, but you have to have the talented people to leave in the room, because you can do that and leave a bunch of people in a room and come back. Leaving them by themselves in a room is not the key to success. Leaving highly motivated, talented people in a room by themselves is a key to success. Because I know a lot of people go, well, Dan, I did that. And I came back and they were just sitting there waiting for me to come back because they didn't understand the instructions. It's like, okay, well, you had the wrong people. But it's true. If you can leave those people who really want to take the initiative and move forward without, and I'll tell you, every leader, I'm included, well, I'm just going to stay because I know these guys, they're not intimidated by me. It's not a question of being intimidated. It's a question of people are going to just act a little differently when it's a peer situation. And if you can create great peer dynamics, that is really powerful. Everyone focuses on the boss to report, direct report relationship. Getting the peers to be able to work with each other, compete, but in a positive way, and be able to help each other and watch each other's backs and add on to the idea. And they'd be able to come back in the room and the team to be able to say, this is what we've come up with. I think it's great, but you just can't, get a team and throw them out there. This takes time to do. You need to make sure. And I put a little matrix. It's funny. I sometimes say, I think this is in the book. It's when you lead a team, and we've talked about that. We love these frameworks and mental models. And one is, you have to, on any team, you need to support individual performance and reward individual performance, and you need to reward team performance. If you do too much individual performance and reward that, then the team won't come together because they don't see any value in being teammates. And if you only reward teamwork, everyone's going to get a free ride, and the high performers are going to get frustrated that they're not being, called out or rewarded for really being unofficial leaders on the team. So like everything in life, nothing is easy. It's gray. You need to reward the individual performers, and you need to reward the team for working as a team. And if you can do both of those, you're going to get these kind of results. And yeah, our ego a lot of times gets in our way. We get this title, we have people reporting to us, and somehow we think all of a sudden we have all this new knowledge and we're just that much smarter. And we're not. We just happen to get lucky enough to be able to lead a team of people. And a lot of times, I think some of the best leaders are probably the ones that know the least about the technical part of it. They're just able to facilitate a group to get to a solution. And it took me a long time in my career at Disney to figure that out. Hey, Dan, you're not here to solve the problem. You're here to make sure the problem gets solved. And if you can get the problem solved, you've done your job. If you've participated in it, well, good for you. But if you haven't, and the problem's still solved, you still did your job. So I tell people sometimes the best thing I could have done when I was working at Disney is just go home early. Just go, just leave. Every moment you spend here in this meeting moving forward is just going to slow everyone down and not add any value. And not every time. Sometimes they needed direction, but a lot of times they didn't. And I just thought, well, I'll motivate them by being there. No, you're not motivating them. Just go. If you want to motivate them, go buy them some pizzas because they're staying late.
Is there something that we can think about or that leaders should think about to help reveal that potential blind spot? And I know blind spots are really important to you as well. Yeah. Is there a question that they can ask, something practical that they can ask where they can say, whatever this is, it's their own personal test where they ask this question, and then that becomes an indicator where they either say, I'm either on this side of that or I'm on this side of that. And if I'm on one side or the other, and I know this makes for awesome audio as I move my hands around, but if I'm either, yes, I'm on the positive side of it, meaning I'm making an impact, or I'm on the other side, I'm drawing energy away. Is there a question? Is there something that leaders can do to help them realize, hey, I might be stifling my team by staying too close. I might be preventing success by staying too close.
Yeah. I think it's like probably everything else in life, in companies. If you want to know what your customers want, go talk to your customers or observe them, because they don't always know what they want, but observe them and see what they're looking for, see what their problems are, see what you're solving for, right? That's what sales is. I'm here to solve a problem for you. So if you can figure out with your customers, well, figure it out with your direct reports and say to them, hey, I have a homework assignment for you. I want you to take the next week, and I want you to write down what the perfect boss is in your mind, how they behave, what they do around, and maybe give them themes, give them around communication, around delegation, around trust, around motivation, whatever those themes are, and have everyone write that down. And you're quickly going to see some themes emerging, and you're going to see the word allowing me to work independently is probably going to come up as something that people want to do. So once they've defined what a great boss looks like, then you need to take that and you need to massage it in what you think you should be doing. Because just because they said that doesn't mean you're going to operate that way. But now you know what your clients want, your direct reports, they're going to work best. And then you're going to add your little piece of, do I have the right team to be able to do that? All the individuals on the team capable of operating that way. And that's going to become your standard. And you can compare it against that standard. And you can ask them, hey, I came up with how I want to lead this group. And I think the best way for me to lead this group is this way. And that you take all their feedback, you put it on a piece of paper, and you come up with who you are, and you give it to them. And every time you meet with them, maybe, 6 months, you say, hey, here's what I said I wanted to do. Can you rate me on how well I'm doing this? And if they say, you know what, on the working independently, you're 2 out of 10. Well, tell me more about that. Why is that? Well, because when we have a project to do, you always sit in all the meetings, the first 5 meetings, and that's the creative time when we don't prior on as creative. So you got to allow them, give them some room. You can't just tell them, what do you want? You need to give them some structure. And then once you have the structure, then you have to give them, figure out creative ways to let them be candid with you without them feeling like, because a lot of them probably, it doesn't matter how open a boss you are. They've all had probably experiences with other bosses where this backfired on them. They were too transparent and it backfired. And they know you, they trust you, but there's still that other experience they had, and they're not going to be totally upfront. So how do you deal with that? We used feedback and action planning sessions at Disney. It's kind of similar to what you're saying. I'd go in a room, I'd talk to the group. Here's how I think we're doing. I'm going to leave for a couple hours. I'd come back and they'd say, okay. And it was stop, start, continue. Here's the things we think you should stop doing, start doing, continue doing. And the big one I tell a story about is, I'm big on, I like harmony. I like to get to a consensus. I'm a consensus builder. That's my strength. And the team told me we love that. But boy, Dan, there's sometimes when we're not going to get to a consensus in a meeting because we all have our point of view. You've allowed us to express our point of view, and we're clearly not on the same page. And that's when you need to hold up your vice president card and go, okay, I'm going to make a decision now because you all aren't going to come to a consensus. And you're going to disagree with some of us, and that's okay. But and it was great. And finally, I'd get in meetings, I'd say, all right, I've heard enough, and this is what we're doing. And someone would say, what, but you haven't? I said, yes, I've heard everything. We're moving here. And they loved it. They're like, well, look, we don't all agree with the direction we're going. We're all going to support it, but man, let's move on. That's great. So we're moving on to the next issue. But you need to have a little bit of a thick skin. You need to be able to get rid of your ego a little bit if you really are willing to hear about that. But I'll tell you, if you can adjust your behaviors to make your team more successful, it's all going to come back to you because you're responsible for that group.
Yeah. And as you were going through that piece, the thing that jumped out at me is this whole idea of the team may not be able to come to consensus. We may try to pull things together, and there's ultimately going to be some conflict, but we need to make a decision. And then once that decision has been made, we're now committed to whatever that is. And then we need to take action, because it's one thing to decide, it's another thing to commit, and then it's another thing to actually start doing those things. And once we start doing those things, then we get some more data and we start to say, hey, this is either working, or maybe we made a bad decision. Maybe it just didn't make sense for us to do this thing.
Yeah.
Want to talk a bit about the mindset piece. And you touched on it just a bit earlier, but we've gone through a lot of stuff over the course of the last 8 months as a country, as people, as a globe. And there are some people who've handled that well. There are some people who have not handled it well. How did your business change once you found out, hey, people aren't going to be meeting in groups, large groups together. People aren't going to be jumping on airplanes and going and meeting with a bunch of people. How did things change in your business? And what did that look like over the course of the last, let's say, 9 months now?
So we're in the same boat. I think a lot of people were in, either if you're an entrepreneur or you work for a company, that March rolled around and we saw this was pretty serious. And then April through the spring and summer, it's like, oh boy. And the same thing happened for us. Valerie and I, we were coming up on 2 years in running our new company. And with January, February, March, we're like, all right, life is good. We're going to different places. We got stuff booked. We have workshops, we have keynote speeches. And all of a sudden March hit and it's like, boom, 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 cancellation, nothing happening, nothing virtual. And Val and I looked at each other and we're like, well, this is not good. This is not what, I guess this is a part of entrepreneurship when you go, it's fun when people are calling and booking things. When they're not, it's not as fun. So we sort of, we had a conversation, and I can't remember a specific conversation we had, but and we've always been this way. We said, well, look, we got to do something. We can't just sit in this house and just sit around and just binge watch Netflix. I mean, we got to do something here. So first thing I did was I said, well, I've heard about these online communities that exist. I don't know much about that. I've heard about these mastermind sessions. I've never done anything like that. So how about we test something out? And so, I sent out a note to my community where my article of the week recipients said, hey, I'm starting these mastermind sessions. Who's interested? And like 250 people said they were. So I had to cull that down because I've found if you get over probably 12 people on a Zoom call, you're not going to have the interactions that you want to have. So I pared it down to about 120 people and said, okay, I'll do a call. I'm going to do 10 groups, one call Monday through Friday for an hour. And we're just going to talk. So I got entrepreneurs together. I know you were, participated. I got some people who were in leadership roles. I mean, and we had people from Australia and Canada and Europe. And there's a Air Force pilot in Uruguay joined the group. And we just had these great conversations. And we didn't have an agenda. We'd get on 1 to 2 o'clock, Monday through Friday. I'd get on with a different group. Hey, how's everyone doing? What are you working on? One guy's up in Ohio. He has a coffee shop. He had to close it. He's doing mobile orders. We brainstorm with him. All right, how are you going to do this? Well, I'm using texting. Have you thought about doing this? And so we just, for 3 months, we had these sessions, and then they ended because we started to get some business again. It got a little busier, and we stopped doing that. And sure enough, 2 months ago, we launched an online community because I had gotten practice. I'd been able to practice for 3 months, understand what people wanted to hear about, how to facilitate conversations, what people were interested in. And so I was doing kind of I guess I did research unknowingly because I knew I might do something. I didn't know if I was going to do it, but that paid off. During the same time, my wife and our daughter just graduated from University of Colorado. And so she's out looking for a job. So we're thinking, all right, well, we're going to end up supporting you now. So we might as well get some work out of you too. So, instead of just sending you an allowance, we're going to send you a salary but you have to work for us. And she was all for it. And so she and my wife, they took How's the Culture in Your Kingdom and created a 13-week undergrad college course because she had just gotten out of college. She goes, yep, we need 13 weeks. We need 2 classes per week. We need reading quizzes. We need a midterm. We need a final. We need case studies. And she and my wife did 90% of the course and put it together. And we're testing at Suffolk Community College. We're coming up on our second semester. We're going to test it again. We're tweaking it. And I'm already talking with Houghton Mifflin and Pearson and some big book publishers to see, because we were thinking, could we sell it ourselves? But that's a lot of work. We said we'd rather them take a chunk of the profit and just maybe use scale here and sell it. It's all digital. You get the PDF book digitally. You get the course as digital PDF book. There's a professor's guide. So once again, that was a door we approached. We didn't know if it was going to have all these locks on it. We were saying, okay, we did a bunch of work and nothing came out of it. And so far, we got a little revenue from it, and maybe it's going to get bigger and maybe it won't. We don't know. But the point was, don't sit around and be a victim. Go do something. I could have chosen that period and said, I'm going to become a triathlete, right? I mean, I had all that time on my hands, but I didn't do that. I decided to spend time in the business. So once again, you can use this time to focus on stuff. And when stuff, and you remember the name of the masterminds, Lemon to Lemonade. Life gave us lemons. Let's make lemonade, people. And we had that theme. So, and I'll tell you, the people who are practical, the people who are cynical, the people who see the glass half empty, see the growth mindset people as naive. And like, how can you be so positive in such a bad environment? It's like, well, I can't change the environment, but I can change how I feel about it. So that's what I'm going to do. And the cynical people look at them and go, well, that's kind of naive. And so be it. I'm naive, and I'm just going to keep making the best of what I have around me.
Well, and the community that you've created, you'd mentioned I'm part of and have gotten a lot of value out of the conversations that have come out of and the discussions that have come out of the community is the Perch. And we'll include links in the show notes so people can see the various things that Dan is working on. And it's amazing when you bring together, and I've been fortunate enough to participate in the last 2 masterminds that Lee and Jody had put on. It's amazing what happens when you put together a group of people who are highly motivated to do good things, how their brains can come together and solve some really challenging problems that we all have in our business, but we don't realize that everybody else is dealing with those in a different way or has worked to solve those in another way. And it's that collective intelligence of the group that can make such a positive impact on your growth and your ability to break through things that you didn't even realize you could break through. So it's really, it's an awesome community of folks. And I think the thing that I hope people take away from this is Dan's not a magician. Well, you might be a magician. Are you a magician?
I'm not. I have a couple good card tricks, but that's about as far as I go.
Dan's not a magician. Dan's not super unique here. Like he just goes through and he says, hey, I've got something in front of me. I'm going to figure out a way to get through it. And it could be the background in sports and success and compartmentalizing and dealing with failure and having to work through adversity and knowing that the game's not over. And sometimes you just run out of time and you might be low on the scoreboard, but you've got to move forward and you can't allow the past to keep you back or hold you back or prevent success. We all have the ability to do this. And one of the things that jumped out at me is Dan's talking about the door. I don't know if this is an analogy or a metaphor, but the door discussion is control what you can control. When you get to a door, if it has 5 locks and you've got a bunch of keys and none of those keys are working on those locks, but you've got a couple of other doors, you can control moving to another door. You don't need to sit in front of that same door over and over again. So control what you can control.
No, absolutely right. And we were talking earlier, and I think we talked about leadership. We talked about sales, and Valerie, great terms that we use often is it's simple, but not easy. These are simple concepts, not easy to execute. And there is no magic. There is no secret formula. There is no, I see these things or, I get calls going, hey, come on our video. And I'm going to show you how in 30 days you can be making 5 figures. It's the funny thing about those is they never talk about what the product is. They just tell you how to sell. They don't talk about what is it you sell. And actually the other day I indulged, someone had reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, we'd like to connect. We're at the social network. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is a little different. Nope. I got the call from the guy. We talked, he pitched to me, I can get you leads. I can use LinkedIn for you. He went through the whole thing. And I realized at one point, I said, well, how could I specifically use this for my business? He said, well, you can, when you get a meeting with a customer. And I said, well, hold on a second. I was very respectful. I said, do you know what I do? He said, well, yeah, you're a consultant. I said, okay. He said, I know you're in you do hospitality and travel. I'm like, well, hospitality. Yeah. I worked at Disney, but I said, I would have expected you to do a little homework here to talk with me live. And I said, you want me to give you $2,000 a month to do this for me? I said, how about this? I'll go with you on this. Why don't you go do a little homework and maybe we can try this again? And I don't know if he's going to call me back or not, but it's just one of those things is, come on, just put it together and do your best here. And you could have done better. And you've heard me talk about that quote before. My grandfather had given me and had quoted, you do your best and you forgive yourself. And a lot of times your best will not be good enough and you will fail, but you forgive yourself and you move on to the next day. And it's really hard for people to let go of the past and let go of the guilt or let go of the shame or let go of the whatever it is they have to let go of. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, if I had that, it would be easier. If I had that background, I would be able to do that, but I don't have that. So I'm different. Or if I just had this, and there's always someone out there that has a whole bunch more of what you don't have, and you have what you have, and you're going to go do what you have with it. And what is your success? Well, it's up to you to define. Is your success $1 billion? Well, maybe not. You make it. Is it making $10,000 a month? Maybe, whatever it is, you got to define what that is. But that's the other thing. I think just my last kind of thought to leave is don't compare yourself with other people, because you will feel, and I still get caught up in that. I see people that have done things. I'm like, God, how did they do that now? I'm like, why them? And I'm like, well, Dan, you love your life. Why are you worried about what they're doing? You're just like, you and your wife are happy. You moved to Colorado. You got this plan. You're doing your thing. Why are you even, I'm like, I don't know. Cause I guess I'm competitive and I want that too. It's like, it makes no sense. So just get out of that mindset and just go out and do the best you can for what you're doing and be happy. And it's easier to, once again, simple, not easy.
I think that should be the name of this podcast. It makes no sense. And it just
makes no sense.
And none of this does. Look, nobody has the quick fix. Nobody has the shortcut. Nobody has all of these things. But there are processes and practices, methods that you can apply that have worked over an extended period of time that you can just start doing today. And maybe that goal is, every day I want to get out of bed in the morning and go for a walk. And you just start with that walk, something you control completely. Right. And then next goal. And as you build up this practice of being able to execute on goals, then you can start to build out bigger goals. And then it's amazing what you can do over a long period of time to take things back to where we started, which is, number of small things done well over a period of time will create amazing results.
Yep.
And thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Where can people go to find out more about where would you like to send people to find out more about what you're working on?
Yeah, you can go to cockerellconsulting.com. As I tell people, I created the first website, dancockerell.com, 2.5 years ago. Then my wife created Cockerell Consulting, and it's like 10 times better. So go check that out. And everything you need to know about what we're doing. I do the article of the week you can subscribe to, which is free. We got Come Rain or Shine, the podcast. We're on about, I think we've done 110 episodes now. And our videos are on there. Contacting us is on there. Our phone number is on there. So anything you want to know, cockerellconsulting.com.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to the Catalyst Sale podcast. If you know of someone who would benefit from this discussion, please share it and let us know via Twitter or LinkedIn. We'll include links in the show notes for the links that Dan discussed. Sales is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours? Thank you.